Okay, how's everybody doing? Welcome back to the engine house. What I've got here is an S gauge, S scale, however you want to call it. It's S gauge, and the scale, of course, is a 167 scale. Locomotive I'm using for a project. This was a locomotive I picked up, and as a matter of fact, I've got rolling stock that came with it. And this is for another project for future date. I'm cleaning it up and shooting video here and there as I'm taking care of it. It's going to be posted sometime next month, and I'm using this for a project I was asked for to do and later on, and I'm not sure when that's going to happen. But anyway, in the meantime, it prompted me to get this cleaned up and maybe functional. I don't have any track. I don't have a transformer for it, so it'll at least look nice for the presentation. So anyway, in the meantime, I have bits and pieces. I'm still working on the tender. The shell is here, and the base is here, and the truck's pieces are here. I still need to finish cleaning the rust off of this one, but anyway, I digress. I'm slowly working on it, and it's another video. Anyway, after the last history video I did, I swore I wasn't going to do it again, but I decided I would punish myself one more time. So I'm going to punish you guys as well. But this is something a little easier for me to talk about. It's a little more near and dear to my heart. Many of us get into the hobby for various reasons. This is a picture of my first model railroad, and my parents wouldn't let me keep it because it wouldn't fit in the basement. And my dad did not want to run tracks around our acre lot that we lived in at the time. So actually, that is a picture of me at the age of 14 as a candy butcher on the number 10 self-propelled coach for the Wolfeboro Railroad that ran between Samernville and Wolfeboro. That coach, by the way, it had started life as a narrow gauge. They moved it to standard gauge. It was a combine coach. They made it a self-propelled, and the guys that started Wolfeboro Railroad, the tourist part of thing in the 70s, fixed it up, put a new motor in it, got it running, and I rode that thing back and forth during the summer from Samernville to Wolfeboro and back, selling candy, bars, and postcards. And at one time I knew the whole history because the conductor would talk about the history of that particular piece of equipment, and I got really well versed in it. I pretty much knew its entire history, but that was I was 14 at the time, and that's a lot of years ago. It was only a few short years later that I joined the Navy, and sometime right after that, the guy that particular part of the Wolfeboro Railroad went under. And then I guess they brought it back while I was in the Navy briefly, and it went under again. And I guess now the rails are still there, and it's used for some kind of tour thing. I don't know what, but the train no longer runs there. But anyway, that's what got me started in model railroading. My first layout was merely a piece of plywood on two sawhorses. My dad built me a couple of sawhorses, and I stuck a piece of plywood on it, put down a grass mat, is that fake roll-out grass mat, ran an HO track around it, had a few buildings. I was 14, 15. I didn't know anything about detailing or any of that stuff. I was just having fun with it. So anyway, that's what got me into model railroading. And so I decided, I was looking up a few things and stumbled across, and again, you'll have to forgive my notes, but I want to talk about the Wolfeboro Railroad. This The Wolfeboro Railroad Company itself was founded on July 1st of 1868, and they built a 12-mile long standard gauge line from the Portsmouth, Great Falls, and Conway Railroads tracks in Salmonsville. Those are now the Boston. The tracks are still there. The Boston and Maine uses the main line now, and the junction itself was still there. And I did not know this at the time, but Salmonsville, and in those days, was formerly known as Wolfeboro Junction. They began construction in 1871, November to be precise, and they opened for traffic on August 19th of 1872. But prior to them opening on January the 6th of 1872, the Eastern Railroad leased the Wolfeboro Railroad for a period of 68 years. Then in 1884, the Boston and Maine took over operations on the Eastern, including the Wolfeboro Railroad line, and they extended the tracks in Wolfeboro across the main street. Their tracks are no longer there. There was a dock on the shores of Lake Winnipesaukee that the lake steamboats would dock at. So Boston and Maine actually extended the tracks out there for the passengers to embark on the steamboats or disembark and embark on the rail line. And at the time, they were using the first floor of a factory as their station there. And then that building burned in 1899. And then in 1900, the next year, Boston and Maine built the new station there, which I believe that's still there. When the Wolfeboro Railroad guys took all of this stuff over to start the Wolfeboro Railroad tourist line in the 70s, the station was pretty much a stripped down version of what it is now. And I think it still looks as it did when they were done fixing it up. Anyway, they in 1892 in June, Boston and Maine acquired the Wolfeboro Railroad as part of its purchase of the Eastern Railroad, and they continue operating it. And then in 1903, Boston and Maine had headquartered its Eastern Division in Salmonsville, and they had a large maintenance facility there. They actually had an engine house there with a turntable, which the turntable is still there. The engine house is gone. There were maintenance barns there at one time. Part of the original station was there when they put in a highway, Route 109. They actually split the building, and part of the building is still there on one side of the tracks, and the other part of the building was long gone. I think that what was there when I still lived there, those were what was left of that station there. And I believe it was not just a station, but I think it also had offices for the Boston and Maine. Anyway, they had turned them into apartments at that time. So it was part of it's there, but a lot of the buildings mostly were gone. While I was working for the Wolfeboro Railroad, I worked there one more summer as fire patrol, chasing the steam a couple miles behind the steam engine, and putting out any little fires that had an Indian tank or two, those old pump, Indian tanks, big brass contraptions that are heavy and full of water. And I rode a little one-cylinder track maintenance buggy and back and forth. Anyway, and that year they actually acquired a turntable to go into the turntable foundation, for lack of a better word, the hole that was there. Everything was there, just missing the platform itself for the actual locomotive. And they put that in. And sometime after I came back from the war, I took a trip out that way. And if I'm not mistaken, the turntable, the bed where the locomotive would actually sit, I believe was still there. And again, the building that had been part of the station and or the offices was still there. When the Wolfeboro Railroad tourist line ran, my mother actually had a gift shop in a building that was just on the other side of Boston and Maine's tracks, and she actually sold tickets for the Wolfeboro Railroad there. She's the one who took the picture of me hanging out of the side of the number 10 coach there. And at that point, they did not have a station per se. Customers would come into the gift shop, they'd buy a ticket, they'd wander around till the next train came in, and then they'd catch that, either it was the steam or they would catch the number 10 coach, depending on which one they wanted to ride. And then they could do the same thing at the other end. They could get off, wander around Wolfeboro, and then catch another train going back to Samronville, and vice versa. Anyway, in 1927, the B&M began using rail cars on that line, and in 1935 they closed the lakefront station, and in 1936 the B&M stopped running trains for passengers only, but it would run mixed of freight and passengers. By the 1960s, not long after it hadn't been closed that long, they were only running freight trains on the track in the 1960s. And then, of course, B&M, when it became unprofitable, it was cheaper to haul things by truck than to go that short distance by rail. So B&M closed that line. And then in the 70s was when I worked for them. A group of guys got together and they bought it or leased it, and then they ran again a steam locomotive on it, and I have the history on this steam locomotive. It was number 250. It was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1926. It is a 262 layout, and of course, again, that means it had 2 leads, 6 drives, and 2 trailing trucks on it. And that they fixed that up. I remember it was in pretty sorry shape when we got it, or when they got it. I remember seeing it. They had an engine barn outside of Wolfeboro Falls. I'm trying to remember the name of the. I believe it was the Crescent Lake, or. And they had something here, and I don't remember what the name of that particular stop was, but it was prior to Wolfeboro Falls. They had an engine shed there, as well as another small ticket station there where you could stop and buy tickets. And both the engine shed, again, this was after I came back from the war. This was in 2007, I think. Both the engine shed is still there, as well as the little ticket building that was there. So some of the stuff is still there that was from when I worked on them and worked for them. But again, they no longer run trains there. I think they have different tourist things going on. I'm not sure. I think they use those little, probably a car similar to what I rode on back and forth, only a little more enclosed, to put up and down the line. I think I read that somewhere, that there's a group that'll do that, and a rail group that will do that. So, that's pretty much what got me into the hobby of model railroading. Now, after I went in the Navy, of course, I was on ships. No room for a model railroad. When I got married, I lived in base housing, or you were moving every 3 years. There's no time, or to set up a model railroad. And then, of course, when I got out the first time, I started driving a semi. I became a single parent all of a sudden, and I had to find, get a job, gainfully employed. So I went to do truck driving while my mother raised my kid. Um, so no time then to really put together a model railroad. And it's all these years later, I finally have the time to get back into the hobby. Now, way back when I started, of course, I was in HO. Um, this was in the 70s again, and it was HO. That's what I wanted to do. And that's but roughly what I wanted to model um, all these years later. And of course, I fell down a rabbit hole of O scale or O gauge or O scale, however you want to call it. And that's currently what I'm doing. And I had picked this S gauge up, and if dirt cheap, it was not running. And again, I think there's 5 cars, a caboose, uh, 2 gondolas, and a box car, and a cover and a hopper, um, so, to go with this, that I picked up dirt cheap, and they all need work. And I thought, well, let's see what happens. And Nothing like getting asked to do a presentation that'll get your butt kicked into gear to get this cleaned up. I didn't want to take it to a presentation in the condition it had been in, so I had torn it down prior to us moving, and it was in pieces in a box. I won't get the rolling stock cleaned up in time. I'm not real worried about that. It's the I'm going to have some locomotives there at this demonstration and presentation. So my main concern was getting the locomotive at least. I have my grandsons. I'm going to be borrowing that. I have O, of course, and I have S, and I have HO. There are 5 popular gauges: um, G, O, S, HO, and N. I don't have any N, and I don't intend to hunt for any. Um, I, uh, I do have HO. I have 1 locomotive left. It's the Spirit of 76. Um, Way back when I was doing this again, when I was 14, 15, when I first was starting, of course, it was the bicentennial in 76. And my parents got me the bicentennial Spirit of 76 steam, along with, I believe they got me the rolling stock, a box car, and a few other things. Those are long gone, but when I was planning on doing HO again all these years later, I happened to stumble across the set that has the steam locomotive and 3 passenger cars, all Spirit of 76. And I grabbed them. I don't even know if they run. They're not even out of the boxes. And I have no track left to run them on. So they're just pretty much there because I like them. And I'm hanging on to them. I lost them once. I'm not losing them a second time. So the only one I do not have is N. And by the way, in case you want to know, HO, out of the 5 of them, HO is the most popular right now. I believe way back in when Lionel started and the O was the big thing. You had Lionel, you had Marks. O was the most popular, and of course, when people started coming out of more of the smaller gauges, and you can put more in the same space that you can put O in, but you can get more in it. So people started moving to the smaller gauges, and of course there's Z, and there's you can give yourself a headache trying to figure out all the different um, gauges and scales they've got nowadays. But anyway, I digress again. We'll get back to this later. And again, there'll be a video on this coming out probably next month, prior to the presentation. my grandson and son are coming this coming weekend coming up, and we'll be doing some things with him, and I won't be doing anything with this. He'll be playing with trains on the layout, and then after that, sometime after that, will be the presentation. So I'll get this done for that. But anyway, I figured that was a little bit of history that got me into the hobby. We all have reasons that we got into it, or no reason at all. I talked to somebody that was a city planner here the other day, and he wants to do a model railroad in his basement, and he has never had or any, for some reason he just likes trains. Nothing ever really has connected him to model railroading, and it doesn't have to. I was just going by my connection, what got me involved in the hobby, and something I've wanted to do again all these years. But you don't need a reason. Just like trains for whatever reason. Doesn't have to be any real particular thing that got you into it. But, I mean, if there is something, fantastic, right? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. That was a little better of a history lesson than my last one. And again, it helps when you actually kind of know the material. I'm familiar with the Wolfeboro Railroad. There was a few things I read that I did not know. So, even I learned something all these years later. But anyway, I hope you enjoy, and I'll give you a quick layout tour here. Give me 1 second, and then we'll call it good. Okay, you can see I've been laying some track here. Move that out of the way. Got some track laid here. I've still got to run some feeders there, and I think I want to put another one over here. The train is right now, that one is a little stuck right there. I've got to climb through and push it along. I think there needs a little bit of a boost there, and it slows down right in here, so I think it's going to need a boost there. And of course, here's Shop Kitty. Yeah. And I built this little stand for the switches. I have 2 remote switches. One's there, one's there. Okay, and they are wired in right here. And believe it or not, they work, and those are from 1947. Those were the wife's dad's set. That one and that one, and they seem to work just fine. And this, of course, is the controller form, and it works just fine. Wired in here directly, but later I'm going to have something where, because I'm going to have more accessories, I don't want a nightmare or a rat's nest of wires here. There's going to be 2 wires coming from this to a block under here, where the wires for accessories like this are going to be wired into. So they will be just 2 wires plus the track wires, and that'll be it. And this, of course, will turn. It'll come this far. There, of course, is another controller that's going to be sitting here a little bit later, and possibly more. We'll have to see. I may have to extend this over to here or over to here. We'll see as time goes on. So we'll go from there. But anyway, this is kind of where we're at right now. All right. So the Shop Kitty's down here making sure I'm doing things right, and she wants her attention. Isn't that right? Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed, and that's pretty much it for now. So thanks for watching, and as always, like and subscribe and leave a comment. I'm always up for that. Have a great day, and bye for now.